Hello, and welcome to another gentle journey on Sleepy Professor Stories. Tonight, you are invited into a very slow kind of story, one written not in words, but in layers of stone, quiet oceans, and patient time. This journey is about extinction horizons, subtle lines in Earth's long memory where life gently changed direction. These moments are not sudden endings or dramatic collapses. They are transitions, like seasons shifting without announcement, recorded softly in rock, ice, and ancient sediments. As you move through deep time, you simply observe patterns of loss and renewal unfolding as part of a wider natural rhythm that has always guided this planet. If you find comfort in these calm explorations, you may choose to support the channel in any small way that feels natural. A simple like, a quiet subscription. You're sharing this space with someone who enjoys learning. Gently can help others discover a place where rest and curiosity meet. There is no pressure here and no urgency, only an open invitation. For now, allow yourself to settle. Let your breathing slow in its own time, without counting or control. Feel your shoulders soften, your jaw loosen, and the weight of the day begin to drift away. You don't need to remember names, timelines, or details. Nothing here requires effort or focus. The story will continue whether you listen closely or drift into sleep, carrying the ideas for you. As this documentary unfolds, you are free to rest, to imagine, or to let your thoughts wander gently. Earth has been waiting a very long time to share these stories, and it is in no hurry at all. Let's begin. Before the first great changes are written into stone, Earth feels quietly full. You are arriving at a time when life moves without urgency, when the planet breathes in long, steady rhythms. There is no sense of waiting for something to happen. Everything that exists feels complete enough, balanced enough, simply by continuing. The surface of the world is different now, shaped by gentle forces working patiently over immense stretches of time. Oceans cover much of the planet, warm and shallow in many places, resting against low, simple coastlines. The water moves slowly, guided by tides and currents that have already settled into familiar paths. There are no sharp boundaries yet, only gradual transitions from light to shadow, from warmth to coolness, from movement to stillness. Within these waters, life spreads quietly. Small living forms drift and grow, dividing and reshaping themselves in ways that feel almost effortless. They do not compete in the way later life will. Instead, they share space, responding to light, chemistry, and temperature with calm persistence. Growth happens, but it happens slowly, without drama, as if the planet itself is setting a careful pace. You can imagine the seafloor below, layered with soft sediments settling grain by grain. Each layer rests gently on the one beneath it, holding traces of what lived above. These layers are not records yet in any deliberate sense. They are simply the natural result of time passing, of particles drifting downward, of remains becoming part of the ground. Nothing here is meant to last forever, yet nothing feels fragile. The air above the oceans is thinner than what you know, is shaped by processes still finding their balance. Sunlight filters through it, bathing the surface of the water in soft tones rather than sharp brightness. Days pass without being counted. Nights arrive without ceremony. The planet turns steadily, unconcerned with observation. Life during this time is patient. It adapts without awareness of adaptation. Chemical exchanges happen within tiny cells, responding to conditions that shift so gradually they barely register as change. There is no memory of what came before, and no anticipation of what might come next. There is only the present moment, repeating itself gently. You might notice how quiet this world feels. Not silent in the sense of emptiness, but quiet in the way a calm room feels quiet, even when it is full of breath and subtle motion. There are no large bodies moving across the land, no sudden disruptions of the surface. Energy flows softly, mostly unseen, through water, through simple structures, through reactions that unfold at their own pace. This long stability allows complexity to begin forming, almost unnoticed. Life experiments slowly, not with bold leaps, but with small variations that either persist or fade away. Some forms become slightly better suited to their surroundings. Others dissolve back into the environment. Nothing mourns their passing. Nothing celebrates their success. The system simply continues. As time moves on, ecosystems begin to take shape, though they are nothing like the intricate webs you might imagine. They are loose, flexible arrangements, capable of absorbing small changes without strain. If conditions shift slightly, life adjusts. If resources fluctuate, growth slows or quickens. There is room for variation here, and plenty of time for balance to return. The oceans act as a great stabilizer. They absorb heat, distribute energy, and smooth out extremes. They are vast enough to make sudden changes unlikely, and deep enough to hold steady even when the surface responds to distant influences. This stability allows life to persist without needing to rush or transform rapidly. You can let yourself drift through this era, moving slowly as the planet does. There is nothing to follow closely, no details to memorize. The importance of this time lies not in specific events, but in its calm continuity. It is a reminder that most of Earth's history is not defined by crisis, but by long stretches of quiet persistence. Even the land, where it rises above the sea, feels subdued. There are no forests yet, no towering structures reaching toward the sky. The surface is shaped by erosion and deposition, by water flowing gently across rock. Minerals dissolve, settle, and dissolve again. The landscape changes, but so slowly that it almost appears still. Life along these shallow margins responds to light and chemistry more than to shape or shelter. There is no urgency to move, no need to escape. The environment is predictable enough to allow rest in its own biological sense. Growth follows available energy. Decline follows scarcity. Both are accepted without resistance. You may notice how different this feels from later chapters of Earth's story. There are no sharp boundaries between before and after, no sudden lines dividing eras. Everything blends softly into what comes next. Even as subtle shifts begin accumulating, they do so quietly, without announcing themselves. Deep beneath the surface, the planet continues its slow internal movements. Heat rises, materials shift, and structures adjust over spans of time too large to feel. These processes are not yet forcing rapid change at the surface. They are simply part of the background rhythm, steady and dependable. In this world, extinction is not yet a concept. Life does not disappear in waves or patterns. Individual forms fade, but life itself feels continuous, unbroken. The idea of silence has not yet taken shape, because nothing has been loud enough to leave an echo. You are allowed to rest here, in this long before. There is nothing you need to anticipate. No turning point has arrived. The planet is content to continue as it is, and life follows its lead, responding gently rather than reacting. As you linger in this calm expanse of time, you might sense how these long periods of balance set the foundation for everything that follows. Stability creates the conditions for complexity, even if that complexity will one day face disruption. But for now, the world remains whole, unhurried, and quietly alive. Breathing remains easy here. Movement remains slow. Change remains distant. And somewhere far ahead, beyond this peaceful stretch of existence, the first subtle shifts are beginning to gather, not as a warning, but as a natural continuation of the story Earth has always been telling. And as this long calm endures, barely disturbed, it quietly prepares the ground for changes that will one day leave their faintest marks, waiting to be noticed. You are drifting now into a time when the oceans begin to change in ways that are almost too gentle to notice. At first, everything feels familiar. Water still stretches wide across the planet, cradling life in its steady embrace. Waves move as they always have, and currents continue their slow, looping paths. Nothing announces that a shift is underway. Nothing asks for attention. Yet, beneath the surface, the seas are quietly adjusting how they breathe. The chemistry of the water changes by degrees so small they pass unnoticed by any single moment. Tiny differences in temperature, in dissolved gases, in the balance between light and depth begin to ripple outward. These shifts are not sudden. They are not dramatic. They are more like the long exhale of the planet, released over spans of time so wide they feel almost still. And life beneath the surface responds without panic. There is no sense of alarm, no struggle to escape. Organisms adjust their rhythms as they always have, following gradients of warmth, chemistry, and energy. Some drift slightly deeper, others remain near the surface but grow more slowly. The sea does not force them to choose quickly. It offers time. You can imagine vast layers of water stacked gently atop one another, each with its own character. Near the surface, sunlight still filters through, feeding simple life that depends on brightness and warmth. Below, darker waters hold steadier temperatures, less disturbed by the changing air above. These layers begin to separate more clearly, like breaths taken at different depths. As mixing between these layers slows, nutrients move differently through the water. What once circulated freely now lingers in certain zones, while other regions grow quieter, less active. This is not absence. It is redistribution. Energy and matter find new pathways, guided by physics rather than intention. The sea floor records these changes patiently. Fine particles settle differently now, forming layers that reflect altered conditions above. Some sediments grow richer in organic material, while others become sparse and pale. These changes do not form sharp lines yet. They blend gradually, like colors fading into one another at dusk. Life adapts in subtle ways. Metabolisms slow or shift. Growth patterns change their timing. Forms that once thrived in certain depths begin to appear elsewhere, not because they are fleeing, but because the environment gently guides them. Survival does not feel like a battle here. It feels like adjustment. You may notice how quiet this transformation feels. There is no single moment you could point to and say, "This is when everything changed." The ocean does not work that way. It reshapes itself through accumulation, through countless small differences layered upon one another until a new normal emerges. Oxygen, once distributed more evenly, begins to linger near the surface in some regions, while deeper waters grow calmer, slower, less stirred. This does not mean the deep becomes lifeless. It simply becomes different. Life that depends on slow processes continues, unhurried, adapted to conditions that feel stable in their own way. The sea's breath, its exchange with the air above, grows more complex. Temperature differences strengthen boundaries between layers, making mixing less frequent. When mixing does occur, it happens gently, like a careful stirring rather than a sudden churn. The planet prefers moderation. You are free to float through this changing world without needing to track every detail. There is nothing you need to remember. The importance of this time lies in how it demonstrates the ocean's role as both cradle and guide. It does not dictate outcomes, it shapes possibilities. Some life forms become more specialized, finding comfort in narrower conditions. Others remain flexible, able to persist across a range of environments. Diversity does not vanish here. It rearranges itself, redistributing presence rather than erasing it. The sea remains full, even as it grows quieter in certain places. Currents adjust their paths subtly, influenced by temperature and density changes that stretch across vast distances. A shift in one region echoes faintly in another, carried by moving water rather than sound. These connections are slow but persistent, binding the ocean into a single breathing system. Time continues to pass without urgency. Thousands of years slip by as easily as moments. To life within the sea, these changes feel gradual enough to integrate into daily existence. There is no clear before and after, only a continuous now that slowly transforms. The surface world remains mostly unaware. From above, the ocean still appears endless and calm. Its color changes with the angle of the sun, not with the chemistry below. Storms come and go, but they do not reach deeply enough to disturb the long-term shifts unfolding beneath. As layers of water settle into new relationships, energy moves differently through the system. Productivity changes its location, concentrating in some areas while easing in others. Life follows these patterns, not with intention, but through simple response. You might imagine this period as a slow breath held slightly longer than before. The ocean inhales and exhales with patience, adjusting its rhythm to a changing world. There is no strain in this pause, only a quiet recalibration. Even as certain environments become less favorable for some forms of life, others find new opportunities. Adaptation unfolds as a series of small steps rather than a leap. The sea allows experimentation without pressure, letting what works continue and what does not gently fade. There is comfort in this pace. Nothing is forced. Nothing is rushed. The planet is not moving toward collapse or crisis here. It is simply exploring a new balance, guided by physics and chemistry rather than conflict. As you rest within this chapter of Earth's story, you can allow your thoughts to drift as slowly as the currents themselves. There is no need to hold on to specific images or processes. The feeling of gradual change is enough. The ocean continues to breathe, though its breath now carries a slightly different rhythm. This rhythm will shape what comes next, not suddenly, but over long stretches of time that feel almost timeless. And as these changes settle into place, they begin to set the stage for deeper transformations, waiting quietly beneath the surface. And as the seas continue this gentle adjustment, their altered breath begins to influence the deeper layers below, where the next quiet shift is already taking form. You arrive in a world where the land itself begins to speak more clearly. Until now, change has moved mostly through water and air, subtle and unseen. Here, the ground takes a gentler but more visible role, shaping life not through sudden violence, but through patient release. The earth exhales, and fine ash drifts softly across quiet forests. Volcanoes do not always announce themselves with noise. Often, they work slowly, releasing heat and minerals over long stretches of time. Beneath the surface, molten rock shifts and rises, guided by pressure and gravity rather than urgency. When it finally reaches the open air, it does not always roar. Sometimes it simply settles, laying down thin layers that rest lightly on leaves, soil, and stone. You can imagine standing far from the source, where the sky grows slightly dimmer, not with darkness, but with a soft haze. Ash falls like grey snow, warm at first, then cooling as it descends. It coats the landscape evenly, not burying it, but touching everything with the same quiet presence. Forests continue to breathe beneath this settling veil. Leaves hold the ash briefly, then release it to the ground below. The weight is light enough that branches do not break. Trunks remain standing. Life is not erased here. It is altered gently, encouraged to respond rather than retreat. The soil receives this ash with patience. Minerals mix into the upper layers, changing chemistry in ways that will matter slowly over generations. Nutrients become more available in some places, less in others. Roots adjust their reach, exploring new pathways through altered ground. Growth patterns shift, not dramatically, but noticeably over time. These volcanic moments are not isolated events. They occur again and again across vast spans of time, each one slightly different, each one leaving a faint signature behind. Layers of ash accumulate in the geological record, thin and pale, marking periods when the Earth's internal heat reached the surface and then rested again. Life learns these rhythms without awareness. Plants adapt to soils enriched or altered by volcanic material. Some thrive in these new conditions, growing taller, spreading wider. Others persist more quietly, conserving energy, waiting for balance to return. There is no competition in the way later ecosystems will know it. There is simply response. Animals that depend on these forests move carefully through the changed landscape. Food sources shift subtly. Some plants produce more leaves, on others fewer seeds. The forest does not vanish. It rearranges itself, redistributing abundance rather than losing it. You may notice how calm this transformation feels. Volcanic activity is often imagined as destructive, but here it is part of Earth's long breathing cycle. Heat rises, matter shifts, and then stillness returns. The planet does not linger in chaos. It settles. Ash also carries memory. Each grain holds information about the deep interior of the Earth, brought to the surface without intention. Over time, these grains compact, forming layers that future stone will preserve. They become markers of moments when the land influenced the direction of life, not by force, but by presence. Rain falls gently through the ash-filled air, helping particles settle into streams and low places. Water carries minerals into rivers and lakes, spreading their influence outward. Aquatic environments adjust as well, responding to changes that begin far from their shores. Connections form quietly between land and water, linking systems that once seemed separate. The pace remains slow. Years pass, then centuries, then spans of time too large to feel. Forests grow accustomed to their altered soils. New balances emerge, stable enough to last until the next gentle shift arrives. The Earth does not hurry from one state to another. It allows transitions to complete themselves fully. You are free to rest within this scene. There is nothing you need to track closely. The story here is not about a single eruption or location. It is about repetition, about how small changes accumulate and become part of the background of life. Even as volcanic regions cool, their influence remains. Now solidified rock weathers gradually, releasing minerals into the soil long after heat has faded. These slow contributions continue shaping ecosystems quietly, long after any visible activity has ended. The forests themselves respond with resilience rather than resistance. Growth rings form within trees, reflecting years of abundance and years of adjustment. These rings do not record catastrophe. They record continuity, the steady persistence of life adapting to subtle change. You may imagine the landscape from above, seen across long time. Darker bands mark periods of ashfall, lighter layers show calmer intervals. Together, they create a pattern that speaks of balance rather than disruption. Earth changes, but it does so with restraint. As volcanic activity ebbs and flows, it influences climate gently as well. If fine particles in the air alter how sunlight reaches the surface, cooling some regions slightly, warming others through complex interactions. These effects are temporary, settling back into equilibrium over time. Nothing here feels final. No door closes completely. Instead, pathways shift, opening new possibilities while softening others. Life continues to explore what works within each new arrangement. You may sense how these moments prepare the planet for later transitions. The land learns how to influence life without overwhelming it. Life learns how to adjust without fear. This quiet partnership deepens over time, shaping the resilience that will matter in ages yet to come. Breathing remains easy here. The air clears gradually. Ash becomes soil. Heat becomes stone. Forests stand quietly, altered but alive, holding the memory of change in their roots and rings. As you linger in this chapter, you can let your thoughts settle as gently as the ash itself. There is no urgency in this story, only patience. Earth continues its slow dialogue between deep interior and living surface, speaking softly through layers laid down over time. And as the ash settles fully into the land, the altered ground begins to influence the skies above, where the next quiet shift waits to unfold. You are moving now beneath skies that are slowly learning how to change. There is no sudden darkening, no dramatic veil drawn across the sun. Instead, the light above the earth softens over immense spans of time, altered by processes so gradual they feel almost imagined. The atmosphere adjusts its composition quietly, layer by layer, breath by breath. At the surface, life continues much as it has before. Oceans still rise and fall along familiar edges. Forests still grow where conditions allow. But above it all, the sky is becoming something new. Gases mix and separate, guided by heat, chemistry, and the slow movements of the planet itself. Nothing here is rushed. The sky has all the time it needs. Sunlight filters through these changing layers differently now. It scatters in softer ways, warming some regions while gently cooling others. The shift is subtle enough that no single generation of life would notice it. Only over long stretches does the difference become clear, like the gradual dimming of a room as evening approaches. You can imagine standing beneath this ancient sky, feeling neither threatened nor alarmed. The light is still there. It simply arrives with a slightly altered tone, a different balance. Life responds without fear, adjusting rhythms that were always flexible enough to bend. Plants adapt their growth slowly. Some adjust how they capture light, spreading leaves differently or changing the timing of their cycles. Others continue unchanged, rooted in conditions that remain steady enough to support them. There is no urgency to evolve quickly. The sky is changing, but it is doing so with patience. In the oceans, microscopic life responds as well. Light penetration shifts, affecting where energy is most easily gathered. Communities drift upward or downward by small degrees, settling into zones that feel comfortable. Productivity does not vanish. It moves. The atmosphere also influences temperature in quiet ways. Heat is retained or released differently, smoothing some extremes while allowing others to emerge gently. Climate does not swing wildly here. It leans slowly, exploring new balances rather than abandoning old ones. You may sense how interconnected these systems are. A change in the sky affects the land, which influences the water, which feeds back into the air above. None of these connections act alone. They form a continuous loop, adjusting together as part of a single breathing planet. Time stretches comfortably in this chapter of Earth's story. Thousands of years pass like moments. Life has room to experiment without consequence. Small changes either persist or fade, absorbed into the background of existence. There is something calming about this slow dimming. It does not signal decline. It signals adjustment. The planet is not losing its vitality. It is redistributing it, finding new pathways for energy to flow. You are free to rest here, knowing there is nothing you need to track or understand fully. The details are less important than the feeling of continuity. Change does not interrupt life. It accompanies it. As the sky continues its quiet transformation, it carries particles from volcanic lands, moisture from warming seas, and gases released by living processes. These ingredients mix gently, creating layers that will one day be read like pages in a book, though no one is reading them yet. Life adapts by doing what it has always done. It persists where it can, withdraws where it cannot, and waits patiently for balance to return. There is no sense of loss here, only motion. Even as the light softens, days and nights continue their steady rhythm. The planet turns, unconcerned with perception. Shadows lengthen slightly, then shorten again as seasons pass. Nothing feels final. You may imagine the sky as a vast archive, holding traces of everything that happens below. Each adjustment leaves a faint imprint, not as a scar, but as a memory woven into the air. The long dimming does not happen everywhere at once. Different regions experience it in different ways, depending on geography, circulation, and chance. This variation allows life to find refuge, to move gently between conditions without needing to escape. There is comfort in this diversity of experience. No single outcome dominates. The planet remains generous with possibility. As time continues, the atmosphere settles into a new state, stable enough to last for ages. Life grows accustomed to this version of the sky, treating it as normal, as it always does. What once was change becomes background. You might notice how little drama accompanies this transition. There are no sharp boundaries, no moments of decision. Everything unfolds as part of a continuous flow, guided by physical laws that favor balance over extremes. The sky's dimming also teaches life something important. Flexibility matters more than speed. Patience matters more than strength. Those forms that endure are not the most aggressive, but the most adaptable. You can let your thoughts drift upward now, following the layers of air as they move slowly around the planet. There is nothing heavy here, nothing pressing. Just motion, circulation, and time. As this chapter draws toward its quiet close, the altered skies begin to influence what comes next, shaping conditions that will one day test life in new ways, not suddenly, but with the same calm persistence that has guided every change so far. And as the ancient skies settle into their softer light, the world below continues adapting, preparing gently for shifts that have not yet announced themselves. You are moving now through a time when presence begins to soften. Life still fills the planet, but some forms that once felt common are becoming less so, not through sudden disappearance, but through a quiet thinning, like footsteps in sand slowly smoothed by wind. Nothing is taken away abruptly. Instead, dominance passes gently from one way of living to another. These vanished forms are not erased. Their influence lingers in shape, in chemistry, in the spaces they once occupied. You can sense them in the structure of ecosystems that remain, in patterns that feel inherited rather than invented. Life does not start over. It reshapes what already exists. Many of these organisms fade simply because conditions drift beyond what they are best suited for. Temperatures shift slightly. Nutrients move to new places. Light arrives with a different quality. None of this feels hostile. It is simply different. Some forms respond easily. Others respond more slowly, and over long spans of time, they become less common. You might imagine these changes as a gradual quieting. Where once a certain life form filled wide areas, now it occupies fewer places. Its role is taken up by others that fit the new balance more comfortably. There is no struggle for recognition. There is no moment of defeat. There is only adjustment. The record of these changes is subtle. In layers of sediment, certain shapes appear less frequently. Chemical traces grow fainter. The planet keeps these memories without emphasis, preserving them as part of a continuous story rather than a list of losses. Life that remains does not celebrate its persistence. It simply continues, unaware that it has outlasted others. New forms do not arrive with fanfare. They emerge slowly, building on structures that already exist, modifying rather than replacing. You can feel how patience defines this era. Extinction here is not a single event. It is a process stretched across generations, gentle enough that ecosystems adapt without breaking. Food webs shift their focus. Energy finds new pathways. Balance is restored in new configurations. Some organisms leave behind physical traces that endure long after their living presence fades. Shells, bones, and impressions become part of the ground itself. Over time, they dissolve, compress, and transform, becoming indistinguishable from the rock around them. Their individuality softens into texture. Others leave no solid remains at all, only chemical signatures or subtle alterations to the environment. These traces are easy to miss, but they matter just as much. They show that life can influence the planet quietly without leaving obvious marks. You are invited to move through this landscape slowly without needing to name what is gone. The importance lies not in identifying each vanished form, but in noticing how smoothly the world accommodates their absence. Space opens, opportunity shifts, life continues. This passing of dominance does not mean emptiness. It means transition. Where one form recedes, another expands. The total presence of life remains rich, even if its expression changes. Diversity reorganizes rather than declines. The planet itself seems accustomed to this rhythm. It has seen countless variations come and go. Each time, the surface adjusts, soils change subtly, waters redistribute nutrients, and climates find new balances. Life follows these cues without resistance. You may notice how little urgency accompanies this transformation. There is no countdown, no final moment. Even as certain forms become rare, they persist quietly at the margins for long periods, existing without dominance but not entirely gone. These margins become places of memory. They hold older ways of living, preserved not by force, but by suitability to specific conditions. As long as those conditions remain, even in small pockets the forms endure. Over time, however, conditions continue to shift. Margins shrink. Presence thins further. Eventually, some forms no longer find places where they fit. When they pass, it is without disturbance. Ecosystems adjust smoothly, redistributing roles that were already changing. You can rest with this idea. Extinction here is not a failure of life. It is part of its flexibility. Letting go allows movement. Movement allows continuity. The ground beneath your imagination holds these transitions quietly. Layers build upon layers, each one recording what was common and what became rare. Future stone will carry these stories even if no one listens. Life that remains inherits traits from what came before. Shapes evolve, behaviors shift, chemistry adapts. Nothing is truly lost. It is transformed, carried forward in altered form. As you drift through this chapter, you may feel a sense of calm acceptance. There is no need to grieve what fades here. The planet does not. It acknowledges change by continuing. This era prepares the way for more pronounced shifts ahead, not by clearing space violently, but by easing the world into new patterns. Dominance becomes temporary. Adaptation becomes central. Breathing remains steady. Time remains wide. The fading footprints are not signs of emptiness, but of motion, leading gently toward what will come next. And as these quiet traces soften further into the background, the Earth readies itself for changes that will test resilience in deeper, slower ways still unfolding. You are drifting now into a quieter chapter of Earth's long story, a time when warmth eases its grip and the planet begins to rest more deeply. Cooling does not arrive suddenly. It spreads slowly, like a long evening settling across the land. Seasons stretch, winters linger, and the rhythm of change becomes more deliberate. Ice forms first in places already accustomed to cold. High ground holds frost a little longer each year. Snow that once melted away begins to remain, compressing gently under its own weight. Over time, it transforms into ice, not through force, but through patience. Layer by layer, the Earth learns a new stillness. You can imagine vast landscapes growing quieter. Rivers slow beneath frozen surfaces. Soil hardens, then softens again in cycles that feel predictable and calm. Nothing here feels hostile. Life adjusts its pace, responding to colder conditions by conserving energy rather than resisting change. Glaciers begin as small presences, almost unnoticeable. They expand gradually, flowing not like rushing water, but like thickened time itself. Their movement is slow enough to feel still, yet steady enough to reshape the ground beneath them. Valleys deepen, hills smooth, and loose material is gathered and carried gently along. As ice advances, it does not destroy so much as rearrange. Rocks are nudged, lifted, and set down elsewhere. The landscape becomes simpler, more open. Complexity pauses, allowing structure to reset. The Earth seems to take a long breath and hold it. Life finds refuge where conditions remain suitable. In lower latitudes, ecosystems continue with little interruption. Along coasts, the oceans moderate temperature, offering stability. Beneath the ice, microbial life persists, adapted to darkness and cold, carrying continuity through stillness. You may notice how sound seems absent in this imagined world. Ice absorbs movement. Wind moves softly across open ground. The absence of noise creates a sense of calm rather than emptiness. The planet is not inactive, it is resting. The oceans respond as well. Colder temperatures alter circulation, encouraging deeper waters to rise and surface waters to sink. Nutrients redistribute slowly, feeding life in patterns that shift without urgency. Productivity changes location, but does not disappear. Sea levels adjust gradually as water becomes locked in ice. Shorelines shift, exposing wide plains that were once submerged. Life follows these changes patiently, spreading across new ground when conditions allow, retreating gently when they do not. You can feel how time stretches during these cold ages. Processes slow, but they do not stop. Erosion continues, though more quietly. Chemical reactions proceed at calmer rates. Growth becomes measured, deliberate. Plants adapt by shortening cycles, conserving resources, and finding ways to endure extended cold. Animals adjust migration patterns, body size, and behavior. None of these changes feel rushed. They unfold across generations, guided by survival that feels calm rather than desperate. Ice leaves its mark not as chaos, but as order. Striations form on rock surfaces, recording direction and movement. Deposits settle into patterns that future landscapes will inherit. When ice eventually retreats, it leaves behind clarity, a simplified canvas for life to return. You are allowed to rest within this stillness. There is nothing you need to understand fully. The feeling of a resting Earth is enough. Cooling here is not an ending. It is a pause that allows systems to reset. Even beneath thick ice, the planet's internal warmth continues its slow work. Heat rises gently from below, preventing complete stillness. This balance ensures that rest does not become stagnation. The Earth remains alive, even when quiet. As cold ages persist, they shape a long-term evolution. Life that endures learns resilience through patience rather than speed. Flexibility becomes more valuable than growth. Endurance becomes a form of wisdom carried forward. The sky above reflects this quieter world. Light scatters across snow and ice, creating soft brightness without heat. Days feel clear and calm. Nights deepen, encouraging rest. Rhythms slow across every scale. You might imagine standing at the edge of a glacier, watching it move so slowly that motion feels imagined. Yet, over centuries, it transforms entire regions. This is change without urgency, power without noise. Eventually, warmth begins to return, just as gently as it left. Ice responds by retreating, not collapsing. Meltwater flows calmly across the land, carving channels that guide future rivers. Life waits, then follows. These cold ages leave behind lessons written into stone and soil. They show that stillness can be productive, that rest can prepare the ground for renewal. The planet does not fear slowing down. As you linger here, breathing slow and easy, you may sense how these periods of cooling create space for what comes next. They are not interruptions, but essential chapters, allowing Earth to recalibrate before continuing its long story. And as the ice begins its quiet withdrawal, the resting Earth prepares for subtle awakenings that will slowly reshape life once more. You are moving now into quieter spaces, places that rarely stand at the center of attention. These are the margins of Earth's changing world, edges where conditions remain just stable enough for life to continue without interruption. While dominant forms shift and landscapes reorganize, these margins hold steady, offering refuge through patience rather than strength. Life here does not announce itself. It persists softly, tucked into sheltered valleys, deep waters, shaded soils, and buffered coastlines. These environments change more slowly than the regions around them, absorbing disturbance and smoothing extremes. For the organisms that live here, continuity feels natural, almost effortless. You can imagine these survivors not as exceptional, but as well-suited. They thrive because they require little, adapt quietly, and respond gently to change. When temperatures cool or warm, they adjust their pace. When chemistry shifts, they alter their internal balance. Nothing about this feels dramatic. It is simply what they do. These marginal spaces are varied. Some exist beneath the surface, in sediments or deep water, where conditions remain steady over long spans of time. Others lie on land, in regions protected by geography or moderated by water. Together, they form a network of quiet persistence across the planet. While larger ecosystems reorganize, these smaller communities continue their daily rhythms. Energy flows through them at a slower rate, but it flows consistently. Growth may be modest, but it is reliable. Life here values steadiness over expansion. You might notice how these survivors carry memory forward. Traits that were once widespread remain alive in these pockets, preserved not as fossils, but as living strategies. When conditions later shift again, these forms become sources of renewal, quietly ready to expand when the time feels right. The margins do not compete with the center, they wait. This waiting is not passive. It is active endurance, a continual adjustment to small changes that never quite push conditions beyond comfort. These environments reward flexibility, tolerance, and calm persistence. In the oceans, marginal life often occupies depths or regions where circulation brings steady conditions. Temperature remains stable. Chemistry changes slowly. Here, organisms maintain long lifespans, slow growth, and efficient use of resources. Time feels wide and forgiving. On land, margins may appear as isolated wetlands, sheltered forests, or regions buffered by elevation or latitude. These places experience change, but always softened. Extremes arrive late and leave early. Life here learns to expect variation without disruption. You are free to rest within this idea of quiet survival. There is nothing heroic about it. There is no struggle to overcome. Persistence happens because the environment allows it, and because life responds with humility rather than ambition. These survivors do not dominate future worlds immediately. They remain present, waiting for opportunity rather than forcing it. When conditions elsewhere become favorable again, expansion happens gradually, guided by suitability rather than speed. The geological record reflects this quiet continuity. Certain traces never disappear entirely. They thin, then thicken again, marking periods of retreat and return. These patterns tell a story of resilience written softly into stone. You may sense how important these margins are to Earth's long story. Without them, change would mean loss. With them, change becomes transformation. Life does not need to reinvent itself completely. It reshapes what has been kept alive. There is calm in knowing that continuity does not require dominance. It requires presence. These marginal communities embody that truth, carrying life forward through intervals that might otherwise feel empty. As climates fluctuate and landscapes shift, these survivors provide stability. They maintain cycles of chemistry, preserve soil structure, and support food webs at low intensity. Their influence is subtle but essential. You might imagine standing in one of these places, feeling sheltered rather than exposed. The world beyond may be changing, but here rhythms continue. Water flows, nutrients cycle, life persists without urgency. Time passes gently. Generations come and go without noticing that they are part of a larger pattern. Survival does not feel like survival. It feels like living. Eventually, conditions beyond the margins soften as well. When they do, these quiet survivors become pioneers, spreading outward slowly, reconnecting fragmented systems. What endured at the edges now shapes the center again. You can feel how this cycle repeats. Retreat, persistence, return. Always unhurried, always guided by balance rather than force. As you drift through this chapter, breathing slow and steady, you may find comfort in this model of resilience. It does not ask for effort. It does not demand attention. It simply continues. These survivors remind the planet that life does not need to be loud to last. It only needs space, time, and the freedom to adjust. And as these quiet lives continue holding the edges together, the layers beneath them begin recording their patience, preparing the ground for stories written deeper still. You are invited now to look downward, not with urgency, but with quiet curiosity. Beneath your feet lies a vast archive, one that has been forming slowly for longer than memory. The ground feels solid and still, yet it is made of countless moments stacked gently together, each layer resting patiently upon the last. These layers do not rush to form. They arrive grain by grain, particle by particle, settling through water, air, and time. Dust drifts down from distant lands. Tiny fragments of shell and minerals sink through calm seas. Ash, sand, and organic remains come to rest, creating thin pages in Earth's long book. Nothing presses them into place. Weight accumulates gradually, allowing lower layers to compact while upper layers continue to arrive. This pressure is not forceful. It is steady, predictable, almost comforting. The Earth allows time to do the work. You can imagine this process unfolding without interruption. A quiet sea floor receives sediment year after year. A river delta spreads fine material across wide plains. Deserts lay down sand in soft, repeating patterns. Each environment writes in its own style, yet all contribute to the same archive. As layers build, they capture the conditions of their time. Chemistry settles into minerals. Organic material becomes part of the rock. Colors shift subtly, reflecting changes in water, air, and life. These signals are not messages meant to be read. They are simply the natural outcome of existence. You are not asked to interpret every layer. There is nothing you need to decode. It is enough to sense that beneath the surface lies continuity, a record created without intention, preserved without effort. Over long spans, deeper layers change. Heat and pressure alter textures, binding grains together. Loose sediments become stone. This transformation is gentle, even when it is profound. Nothing shatters. Everything rearranges itself slowly, guided by physical laws that favor stability. Life participates in this writing quietly. Shells settle and dissolve. Roots disturb upper layers, then retreat. Microorganisms alter chemistry in ways too small to see, yet significant over time. These interactions leave subtle marks woven into the fabric of the rock. You may imagine walking across a landscape shaped by these processes. Hills reveal bands of color. Cliffs expose stacked histories. Each visible layer represents a chapter, not isolated, but connected to what lies above and below. Erosion also plays its part. Wind, water, and ice gently remove material from one place and deliver it to another. This is not destruction. It is editing, redistributing pages so new ones can be written. The archive remains whole, even as its form shifts. As layers are exposed, they offer glimpses into earlier worlds. But you do not need to look closely. The comfort comes from knowing that the Earth remembers, even if no one is reading. Time passes easily here. Thousands of years compress into thin lines. Millions of years become gentle gradients. The scale feels large, yet not overwhelming. The layers hold it all calmly. You might notice how this archive softens the idea of change. Nothing happens all at once. Everything arrives gradually, settles, and becomes part of what supports the next layer. Even moments of disruption are absorbed, smoothed into continuity. The ground beneath you is not just a surface. It is a foundation built patiently, allowing life above to come and go without losing balance. Forests grow and fade, seas advance and retreat. Through it all, the layers remain, holding memory without attachment. You are free to rest with this image. There is no need to imagine specific times or places. The feeling of accumulated time is enough. It reminds you that change does not need to feel sharp to be meaningful. As the planet continues to evolve, new layers are always forming. Even now, particles are settling, adding to the archive. The process never stops. It only slows or quickens in response to conditions. This steady writing prepares the Earth for future changes. When conditions shift, the layers already in place influence how water flows, how mountains rise, how ecosystems take shape. The past supports the present quietly. You may sense how this perspective eases the idea of endings. Nothing truly disappears. It becomes part of what lies beneath, contributing to what will come next. Breathing remains slow here. Thoughts can drift like settling sediment. There is nothing to hold on to tightly. The ground is already holding everything. As you linger with these layers, you can feel how they connect all the chapters of Earth's story. From quiet beginnings to periods of change, everything rests together, stacked gently in time. And as these layers continue to accumulate, they prepare to reveal deeper patterns still waiting below, where the next quiet story begins to unfold. And as the layers continue to build in patient silence, they begin to hint at patterns deeper still, where time itself starts to arrange the echoes of Earth's long past. You are arriving now at a moment that feels like a pause after movement, a calm space that follows change without announcing itself as new. The turning point has already passed, though nothing dramatic marked its arrival. There were no clear signals, no final boundaries. Life simply begins to behave differently, guided by conditions that have quietly shifted. This is not a time of urgency. Renewal does not rush forward. Instead, it unfolds slowly, like a landscape adjusting after a long season. The ground remains familiar, yet subtly altered. The air carries the same light, though it moves differently. Water flows along paths shaped by what came before, carving gently rather than cutting sharply. Life responds with patience. There is no single direction it must take, no blueprint to follow. Small variations appear, not as bold innovations, but as gentle experiments. Some persist, others fade. Each attempt is allowed time to reveal whether it fits the world as it now exists. You can imagine this period as a quiet testing ground. Ecosystems reorganize themselves without pressure, redistributing roles that were once filled differently. Energy moves along new pathways, finding balance through repetition rather than force. The pace remains slow enough to feel restful. In the oceans, life spreads into spaces that were once less favorable. Conditions have softened or shifted just enough to invite exploration. New relationships form between organisms, guided by availability rather than competition. Nothing here feels crowded. There is room to adjust. On land, open ground invites growth, but not immediately. Soil develops first, shaped by weathering and time. Microbial communities establish themselves quietly, preparing the foundation for larger forms. Plants arrive gradually, responding to chemistry and climate that now feel steady enough to support them. You may notice how little attention this renewal draws to itself. It does not declare success. It does not hurry to replace what was lost. Instead, it builds slowly, layer by layer, trusting that stability will emerge through persistence. This period is defined by flexibility. Life does not commit fully to any single strategy. It explores options gently, remaining adaptable. Forms that can tolerate a range of conditions do well. Those that require narrow circumstances remain limited, waiting for alignment. The planet supports this exploration by maintaining moderation. Extremes remain rare. Temperature shifts are gradual. Water availability changes slowly. These conditions allow life to experiment without risk of sudden collapse. You are free to rest in this openness. There is nothing you need to follow closely. The importance lies in the feeling of possibility, not in specific outcomes. Renewal is happening, but it is not demanding attention. Over long spans of time, some experiments begin to settle into patterns. Food webs stabilize. Habitats become more defined. These structures are not rigid. They remain capable of change, but they offer enough predictability to support growth. You might sense how this stage prepares the world for greater diversity. By allowing slow reorganization, the planet encourages complexity to return in forms suited to current conditions. Nothing is forced to resemble the past. Memory influences the present, but it does not control it. The ground beneath reflects this transition. New layers form above older ones, incorporating material from both what was lost and what persists. This blending creates continuity, ensuring that renewal does not erase history, but builds upon it. Life above responds intuitively. There is no awareness of having passed a turning point. There is only the present, shaped by what the environment offers. Growth follows opportunity. Decline follows limitation. Both are accepted without resistance. You may notice how calm this feels compared to earlier changes. There is no sense of recovery in the emotional sense. The planet does not mourn or celebrate. It simply continues, guided by processes that favor balance. As ecosystems mature, interactions become more intricate. Cooperation and competition both exist, but neither dominates. Energy flows efficiently, minimizing waste. Systems learn how to sustain themselves over longer periods. This is where resilience begins to take new shape. It is not built through strength or speed, but through diversity and flexibility. Life spreads its risk, occupying different niches, exploring different strategies. This makes the system less fragile, more able to absorb future change. You can imagine this renewal as a quiet dawn rather than a sudden sunrise. Light increases gradually. Shadows soften. Details emerge slowly. The world does not wake abruptly. It stirs. The atmosphere continues adjusting as well, responding to biological activity and physical processes. Gases circulate, temperatures stabilize, and patterns emerge that will influence life for ages to come. These changes remain subtle, supportive rather than disruptive. You are invited to let your thoughts drift alongside this slow rebuilding. There is nothing to solve, no conclusion to reach. The story remains open, unfolding without expectation. As time passes, some forms grow more prominent, while others remain background presences. Dominance begins to emerge again, but it does so cautiously, shaped by lessons learned through earlier transitions. No single form overwhelms the system immediately. The planet seems to favor balance now, rewarding adaptability over specialization. This preference is not deliberate. It is simply how conditions align. Life follows. You may feel a sense of reassurance here. After change comes continuity. After disruption comes quiet experimentation. The world does not remain in flux forever. It finds ways to settle. As this chapter nears its close, renewal continues without needing recognition. The turning point has led not to resolution, but to possibility. Life is moving forward, slowly, exploring what it can become. And as these gentle experiments continue shaping the world, the next chapter begins to emerge, asking not what was lost, but how new forms will one day leave their mark. You are moving now into a time shaped by presence that once felt immense. The world has known giants, forms of life that occupied space with ease, whose size and influence defined entire landscapes. Yet here, there is no spectacle, no sense of astonishment. These giants are not remembered through drama, but through quiet traces, softened by time. They did not vanish suddenly. Their dominance faded slowly, step by step, as conditions shifted and the world gently asked for something different. Where they once moved freely across land and sea, their paths grew narrower, their numbers thinner, until presence became memory rather than reality. You can imagine the land during their time, shaped subtly by weight and movement. Soil compacted beneath steady passage. The vegetation responded to browsing and grazing, adapting its growth patterns. Even without intention, these large forms influenced how ecosystems arranged themselves, leaving impressions that linger long after bodies were gone. As environments changed, size became less suited to the rhythms of the planet. Resources redistributed. Climate softened in some regions and tightened in others. Large forms required consistency, and consistency became harder to find. This was not failure. It was mismatch, unfolding gently. You might expect such giants to leave dramatic endings, but they do not. Their passing is quiet, spread across generations. One population dwindles, another adapts slightly, then recedes. Over time, what was once common becomes rare, then absent without ceremony. The earth does not mark their absence loudly. Instead, it absorbs their history into layers of stone, into scattered remains, into altered landscapes. Bones settle into sediment. Footprints erode into suggestion. Chemical traces fade into the background. Memory becomes diffuse. Life that remains adjusts without hesitation. Smaller forms expand into spaces once occupied by larger ones. Energy flows along new routes. Food webs rearrange themselves, redistributing roles that were once concentrated. Balance returns, different but stable. You may sense how size itself is temporary in Earth's story. Being large offers advantage for a time, but it also ties existence closely to specific conditions. When those conditions drift, flexibility becomes more valuable than scale. These giants continue to influence the present quietly. Their remains enrich soil. Their absence changes vegetation patterns. Even myths and human imagination much later will respond to the echoes they leave behind. But for now, the planet simply continues. You are invited to consider these forms not as losses, but as chapters completed. Their existence mattered while it lasted. Their influence did not end with their bodies. It transformed, becoming part of what supports future life. In the oceans, large forms followed similar paths. Once dominant swimmers, they shaped currents of life around them, influencing prey and habitat. As conditions changed, some adapted, others retreated. The sea, vast and patient, absorbed these changes without strain. You may notice how calm this feels. There is no tragedy here, no struggle to preserve what cannot persist. The Earth does not cling to any single form. It allows expression, then release, trusting that continuity lies in change. Fossil traces are rare windows into these past presences. They are incomplete, scattered, softened by time. Yet they are enough to remind us that dominance is never permanent. Even the largest forms participate in impermanence. You can rest with this understanding. There is nothing unsettling about it. It is simply how the planet works, allowing life to explore different shapes, scales, and strategies across time. As giants fade, ecosystems become more finely divided. Smaller forms fill niches, creating diversity through specialization rather than size. This shift supports resilience, spreading influence across many forms rather than concentrating it in a few. The land grows quieter in new ways. Without the movement of massive bodies, vegetation patterns change. Forests thicken or open. Grasslands shift. These changes are not improvements or declines. They are adjustments. You might imagine standing in a landscape where giants once moved, feeling no sense of absence, only difference. The world feels complete as it is, just as it did before, and just as it will again. Memory persists without attachment. The Earth holds stories without insisting they be remembered. Time continues layering experience, allowing past and present to coexist without conflict. As you drift through this chapter, breathing slow and even, you may find reassurance in the planet's willingness to let go. Nothing is forced to last forever. Nothing is erased without contributing to what comes next. These giants are not gone. They are redistributed. Their materials, their influence, their lessons are woven into the fabric of life that follows. Continuity does not require sameness. The planet seems to understand this deeply. It welcomes new forms without rejecting old ones. It carries memory forward without clinging to it. As this reflection unfolds, you can feel how the passing of giants creates space for new experiments, new balances, new expressions of life. The story does not end. It opens. And as these great presences settle fully into memory, the Earth turns its quiet attention toward patterns that repeat, gently reminding itself how change has always moved in cycles. You are moving now into a way of seeing that feels wider and calmer, where individual moments soften into repeating motion. The Earth is not pausing to reflect on what has happened. It is not planning what comes next. It is simply continuing, guided by rhythms that unfold again and again without intention. And these patterns are not events you can point to. They are tendencies, gentle habits of a planet shaped by physics, chemistry, and time. Warmth accumulates, then disperses. Ice advances, then retreats. Oceans circulate, slow, and circulate again. None of this is decided. It happens because conditions allow it. You may imagine these cycles as slow waves passing beneath everything else. Life rises and falls with them, not in perfect symmetry, but in response. When conditions favor expansion, life spreads. When they favor restraint, life simplifies. Both movements feel natural, neither carrying urgency. The land reflects these rhythms quietly. Mountains rise through gradual pressure, then wear down through patient erosion. Plains form, gather sediment, and later lift or sink again. The surface of the planet is never fixed, yet it never feels unstable. Change happens slowly enough to feel like continuity. You can sense how these patterns ease the idea of extinction horizons. They are not singular breaks, but parts of repeating adjustments. When conditions shift beyond what certain forms can tolerate, those forms fade. When conditions align again, life reorganizes. The cycle continues without memory or regret. In the oceans, repetition is especially clear. Circulation patterns strengthen and weaken over time, redistributing heat and nutrients. Productivity moves from one region to another, then returns in altered form. Life follows these changes patiently, adapting its presence rather than resisting. The atmosphere joins these cycles as well. Gases build up, disperse, and rebalance. Light reaches the surface differently across long spans, influencing temperature and chemistry. The sky does not aim for perfection. It settles into whatever balance is available. You are free to rest within this understanding. There is nothing you need to track or predict. The comfort lies in knowing the change is not chaotic. It follows tendencies that have played out many times before. These patterns are not identical with each repetition. Each cycle unfolds under slightly different conditions, shaped by what remains from the last. This variation allows the Earth to explore new arrangements while staying within familiar bounds. Stability and change coexist. Life mirrors this behavior. Strategies that worked once may work again, though never in exactly the same way. Adaptation draws from memory embedded in genetics and ecosystems without awareness of doing so. Continuity emerges from repetition with a variation. You might notice how this perspective removes the idea of direction. The Earth is not moving toward a goal. It is not improving or declining. It is cycling, adjusting, responding. Meaning arises from persistence rather than progress. Time stretches comfortably here. Cycles span thousands, even millions of years, making individual moments feel small but secure. No single change carries the weight of finality. Everything is part of motion that has happened before. You can imagine standing at the center of this movement, feeling neither pulled forward nor backward. The present is simply one expression of patterns already familiar to the planet. These repeating rhythms also create resilience. Because change is expected, systems remain flexible. Life does not invest everything in one state. It spreads risk across forms, behaviors, and habitats. This flexibility allows continuity even through pronounced shifts. The geological record reflects these repetitions softly. Layers thicken and thin. Chemical signatures rise and fall. Certain patterns reappear, spaced unevenly but recognizably. The Earth writes with loops rather than lines. You may sense how calming this is. Nothing needs to be held tightly. Nothing needs to be prevented. The planet has moved through these motions before and will do so again, regardless of observation. As you breathe slowly, you can allow your thoughts to move in the same way. Rise, settle, return. There is no need to control where they go. The rhythm itself is enough. Even moments that feel like turning points fit within this larger flow. They are places where cycles overlap or shift emphasis, not breaks from the pattern. After them, movement continues, familiar yet new. Life thrives, not because it escapes these cycles, but because it belongs to them. It learns their timing, their boundaries, their opportunities. This belonging is what allows persistence without struggle. You might imagine the Earth as a calm listener to its own rhythms, unconcerned with how they appear from any single moment. The repetition does not bore it, it sustains it. As this chapter unfolds, you may feel a gentle reassurance. Change does not mean loss of meaning. It means participation in a rhythm that has always been present. There is nothing here to conclude. Patterns do not end. They continue, folding into one another, shaping the long story without intention. And as these quiet cycles continue, turning without aim or hurry, the Earth settles into a rhythm that gently carries every story forward, ready to repeat once more. You are stepping back now, widening your view until individual moments soften into something larger and more reassuring. From this distance, Earth no longer appears as a place of sudden change or fragile balance. It feels steady, held together by rhythms that have been tested and retested across immense spans of time. This is a planet that adjusts, not with urgency, but with quiet confidence. All the changes you have moved through so far begin to connect here. Cooling and warming, loss and renewal, expansion and retreat are no longer separate chapters. They are expressions of the same steady process, unfolding again and again. Earth does not cling to any one state. It shifts gently, guided by physical limits that keep it from drifting too far in any direction. You may notice how comforting this perspective feels. The planet has faced conditions far different from those of the present, yet it remains capable of supporting life. Not because it resists change, but because it accommodates it. Stability does not mean stillness. It means adjustment that happens slowly enough to remain supportive. The surface of the Earth reflects this balance. Mountains rise, not in sudden bursts, but through long pressure applied patiently. When they become too tall, erosion eases them back down. Oceans spread and withdraw along familiar basins, shaped by the same gravity and rotation that have always guided them. Nothing escapes these influences, and nothing is overwhelmed by them. Life fits into this adjusting system naturally. It does not demand permanence. It explores what works within the conditions offered. When those conditions shift, life reshapes itself, not all at once, but across generations that feel no urgency to arrive at an outcome. You can imagine the planet as a vast, slow-moving structure, constantly redistributing energy. Heat flows from deep within toward the surface. Sunlight arrives from above, unevenly warming land and sea. These flows drive circulation in air and water, setting the stage for climate patterns that repeat with variation rather than precision. The Earth does not aim for balance in the way a mind might. Balance emerges because extremes tend to soften over time. When ice expands, it reflects light and encourages cooling to slow. When warmth increases, circulation spreads heat outward, preventing accumulation in one place. These feedbacks operate quietly, without awareness, yet they shape the long-term stability of the planet. You are invited to feel small here, not in a way that diminishes you, but in a way that relieves pressure. No single moment carries the weight of the whole story. No single change defines the future. Everything is part of a larger motion that has already absorbed countless variations. The geological record supports this view. Layers show repetition rather than linear progress. Certain conditions return in altered form, separated by long intervals. Life responds differently each time, but the underlying processes remain familiar. The Earth remembers how to adjust because it never stops practicing. You may notice how this understanding reframes extinction horizons. They are not signs of failure or collapse. They are markers of adjustment, moments when certain forms no longer fit the available conditions. Life does not end at these points. It redistributes, exploring new arrangements within the same planetary framework. The oceans, in particular, demonstrate this resilience. They buffer temperature, store carbon, and circulate nutrients across the globe. Even when surface conditions change dramatically, deeper waters maintain continuity. This layered stability allows life to persist through surface fluctuations. On land, soils develop slowly, integrating material from countless past environments. This complexity allows vegetation to adapt without starting from nothing. Roots explore chemistry shaped by earlier life, drawing on resources accumulated over long time. The past supports the present quietly. The atmosphere, too, participates in adjustment. Its composition shifts in response to geological and biological processes, but it remains bound by gravity and circulation. Light continues to reach the surface. Temperatures remain within ranges that allow liquid water to exist. These constraints provide a stable frame for change. You can rest with the idea that the Earth is not fragile in the way small systems are fragile. It is robust because it operates slowly, allowing corrections to unfold before extremes accumulate. This does not mean it is unchanging. It means it is forgiving. Life benefits from this forgiveness. Mistakes are not final. Experiments that do not fit fade without disrupting the whole. Successful strategies spread gradually, tested by time rather than speed. Diversity emerges because no single form can dominate indefinitely. You might sense how this perspective encourages patience. The planet does not hurry to fix itself. It does not rush to recover or rebuild. It allows processes to complete their cycles, trusting that balance will emerge through repetition. From this wider view, even dramatic events appear softened. Volcanic eruptions become brief moments in long landscapes. Climate shifts become gentle curves when seen across enough time. Extinction becomes transformation when viewed without focus on immediacy. You are supported by this scale. Whatever moment you imagine within Earth's history, it is held by processes far larger than any single outcome. The planet continues whether observed or not, carrying life forward through adjustment rather than intention. As ecosystems reorganize after change, and they do so within boundaries shaped by physics and chemistry that rarely shift quickly. This creates a sense of safety. The rules of the system remain familiar, even when expressions vary. You may imagine the Earth as a steady companion, moving alongside time rather than racing ahead of it. It does not seek novelty for its own sake. It allows novelty when conditions make it possible and lets it go when they do not. This steadiness extends into the future as well. While details will differ, the processes you have explored will continue. Heat will move, water will circulate, life will adapt, the planet will adjust. You are free to let your thoughts drift here, knowing there is nothing you need to resolve. The comfort comes from continuity itself. Earth has always been adjusting, and that adjustment has always allowed room for life. As you breathe slowly, you may feel supported by the vastness of this story. The planet does not demand attention or effort. It carries on, offering stability through change. This chapter does not conclude with certainty. It rests in reassurance. Earth's history shows not perfection, but persistence, not control, but accommodation. That is what has allowed life to remain. And as this wider view settles in, the planet continues adjusting without pause, quietly preparing the space where the final reflections of this journey can come to rest. You are arriving now at a place where movement softens into quiet. The long journey through time has carried you across shifting seas, cooling lands, fading forms, and gentle renewals. Here, there is no new chapter opening. There is simply space. The world feels wide again, as if it has taken a slow breath and chosen to rest. Nothing dramatic happens in this stillness. The planet does not pause its processes, and it does not conclude its story. Instead, everything continues at a scale so calm it feels almost invisible. Mountains continue their subtle adjustments. Oceans keep circulating heat and minerals. Life persists in patterns that no longer ask to be noticed. You may sense how little effort this requires. The Earth does not strain to remain stable. It does not hold itself together through tension. Balance emerges because so many processes move slowly, correcting one another before extremes take hold. This is not perfection. It is patience. As you rest with this idea, the echoes of earlier changes grow softer. Extinction horizons no longer feel like edges or endings. They feel like moments that have already been absorbed, smoothed into continuity. What once seemed significant now feels integrated, part of a larger rhythm that no longer needs explanation. The land beneath you holds memory without weight. Layers of rock carry the past, but they do not press upward with urgency. They rest, supporting whatever exists above them now. Forests grow, soils form, waters move, all drawing quietly from what came before. You might imagine standing in a place where nothing remarkable appears to be happening. A plain under open sky, a calm shoreline, a slow-moving river. These scenes feel complete, not because they lack history, but because history has settled into them. Life continues in this settled world without striving. Organisms follow daily rhythms shaped by light, temperature, and availability. They do not sense themselves as survivors or successors. They are simply present, participating in cycles that feel ordinary and reliable. You can feel how this ordinariness is the achievement. After long spans of adjustment, the planet has returned to a state where change feels manageable again. Not absent, but gentle enough to be woven into daily existence. Even now, subtle changes are unfolding. Chemistry shifts slowly in soils and seas. Atmospheres continue their quiet exchange with living systems. But none of this asks for attention. It happens whether observed or not. You are invited to let go of the details you have gathered along the way. You do not need to remember specific processes, moments, or outcomes. The understanding has already settled, like sediment in calm water. What matters is the feeling of continuity that remains. This stillness does not mean the story has ended. It means the story has become quiet again. Just as before the first great changes, the world feels complete enough to continue without interruption. You may notice how safe this feels. The planet has held itself through extremes and transitions, and it continues to do so now. Whatever lies ahead will unfold within the same broad constraints that have always guided it. The future, like the past, will not arrive all at once. It will emerge gradually, shaped by the same slow forces that shaped everything you have encountered. Heat will move, water will flow, life will adapt, time will pass. There is no need to anticipate what comes next. The Earth does not. It simply responds, adjusts, and continues. As your attention softens, you might feel yourself becoming smaller within this vastness. Not diminished, but supported. You are part of a system that has always accommodated change by allowing space for rest. Breathing feels easier here. Thoughts can slow without needing direction. The planet is not asking anything of you. It is not asking to be understood or remembered. It is simply being itself. The echoes of past upheavals fade further, becoming part of background noise so gentle it no longer feels like noise at all. What remains is motion without urgency, stability without rigidity. You may sense how this perspective offers comfort beyond geology or time. It suggests that not everything needs resolution. Some processes are allowed to continue quietly, doing their work without recognition. Life thrives not only in moments of growth or transformation, but also in these long stretches of calm persistence. These are the intervals that make endurance possible. As you rest within this final chapter, you are free to drift. There is nothing left to follow closely, nothing left to prepare for. The journey has already carried you where you need to be. If you enjoy these slow explorations, you may support the channel in any small way that feels natural, helping others discover a place of calm and gentle learning. But even this is optional, something to consider another time. For now, there is nothing to decide and nowhere to go. The Earth continues its quiet work. Life continues its subtle rhythms. Time continues to pass without hurry. You can allow your muscles to relax, your thoughts to soften, and your breathing to find its own pace. The world is steady enough to hold everything else for you. This is not an ending, but a resting place, where echoes fade and stillness feels complete. And as the echoes settle fully into silence, the night remains open and calm, ready to carry you onward, one peaceful breath at a time.